In this podcast, we're going to look at and analyze one of the major issues facing developmental psychology, and that's how humans develop. Do we tend to develop in stages that are discrete and separate and very distinct, or is our development much more gradual and continually ongoing? So most psychologists are not on one particular side of this. Most psychologists are in the middle somewhere. So it's important to know that there are few psychologists on polar ends of this issue. Okay, so let's look at this blue rectangle. This gives us an idea of what a stage actually is. And what's important about this is it's connected to development, and that it believes that in any particular stage there's behavior and certain capacities, like for instance, as an example, cognitive capacities. Think about a 6-month-old, a 3-year-old, and a 35-year-old. Obviously, we're skipping around a lot, but obviously the typical behavior exhibited by humans of these ages, very different, and the cognitive capacities of these age groups, very different. If you want to make an example that's a little bit, more relevant to your life, the difference between a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old cognitively can be quite great, actually, in terms of the ability to think abstractly. Not every single individual, but for many. Now, the other idea here is that there are major thinkers in the world of psychology who tended to come up with theories that emphasized this type of development, and these were the following men, 3 of which we will be studying in some detail in this unit: Erikson, Piaget, and Kohlberg. Now, when we talk about continuity, Myers talks about it, the metaphor he gives is an escalator, which is a very good metaphor, as opposed to individual rungs on a ladder that are separated for each other. That's stages. So the idea is that these are abrupt and distinct from each other. Something new is gained as we move up the ladder. Now, a good example of the development that seems to go through stages, or when we look at insects. Insects have these phases, and almost all insects, as far as I know, go through these stages. And what's important here is we see this as distinct from this, this, and this. We also tend to observe that even within these different phases, the capacities and the abilities and the behaviors, remember from that first slide, do somewhat differ. Sometimes the larval stage of an insect, the diet will be very different. Eating will be much more prioritized than when they are adults. They may even eat different types of food. But again, there's a lot of variation within that. So therefore, we can get back to this idea when we start seeing that there is variation even among insects. However, this is a good example of distinct stages. We can visually see the difference between the larval stage and the adult stage. This is a graphic from your book that's on page 463. I think it's very helpful. Just put it there as a reminder, because you can see how each one of these theorists are connecting different stages of development. So for Kohlberg, he's focused on moral development, and you can see it's connected to ages. So by the time we're 10 years old, we're moving from pre-conventional to conventional, which means that the organism, the human, is now able to engage his or her moral capabilities have increased. And we'll go into that in more detail, exactly how and why that happens. Now, the other thing, as we close out this vodcast, is to think about those psychologists who emphasize more of this idea that development is continuous. They tend to emphasize learning and experience, and for them the process is slower. Proponents who see development as going through discrete stages tend to emphasize biological maturation, but not all of them do. But they tend to prioritize that. And again, this is very important, as is this last box. The idea that we all go through these stages and we go through them in the same order. This has been widely criticized as one of the weaknesses in seeing development as going through stages. So, for instance, research is showing, for instance, in cognitive development, which is connected to Piaget, that there are a lot of individual differences. So therefore, there is actually more variation than we originally thought, and that cognitive development seems to be more slow and more gradual. So again, favoring the proponents of development as continuous.